51-year-old Richard Mallory was driving on the highway when he encountered a woman on the side of the road looking for a ride. Richard picked up the woman without knowing that would be the last drive he would ever take. Richard would then become the first victim of the damsel of death, otherwise known as Aileen Wuornos.
From the start, Aileen Wuornos had a very rough childhood. Aileen grew up in Michigan, north of Detroit, being raised by her grandparents after her biological father went to prison for child molestation and later killed himself. Eileen's biological mother abandoned her and her older brother Keith while they were infants. Eileen's grandparents then gained custody of them, and the siblings were raised to believe they were their biological parents. Once Aileen found out they were her grandparents, it caused more tension in the family. Eileen's grandfather had a harsh way of discipline, and she once watched him drown in pain.
Eileen's home life with them was harsh too. Eileen's grandmother was an alcoholic, constantly in and out of rehab, and her grandfather would sexually and physically abuse her. By the time Aileen was 11 years old, she started having sexual relations with her brother and was offering sexual favors to boys she knew in exchange for money or cigarettes. At 14 years old, Aileen got pregnant and her grandmother sent her to a home for unwedded mothers. After the baby was born, she gave him up for adoption and ran away from home. Aileen was either found in juvenile detention, sleeping in the woods, or abandoned cars.
As a kid, Wuornos had an explosive temper and couldn't make friends. This would only hurt her more in the future. In 1976, Wuornos married a wealthy yachtsman named Louis Ratzfeld. The couple got married that May, but soon divorced July 19th of the same year. Louis explained her as being violent and having an ungovernable temper. About 10 years later, in 1986, Aileen met her soon-to-be 24-year-old girlfriend, Aileen Moore, at a gay bar in Daytona. Wuornos and Moore had a very intense 4.5-year relationship. The two lived in various mobile home parks, motels, and apartments. Tyler worked as a maid while Aileen was still working as a sex worker on Florida highways. Wuornos would drink substantial amounts of alcohol while working as a prostitute and also carry guns for protection.
On December 1st, 1989, after several days working on the highway, Wuornos returned home very intoxicated and told Moore that she had shot and killed a man earlier that morning, who turned out to be her first victim, Richard Mallory. Aileen then went on to kill 6 more men. All of her murders were in Central Florida, and police would soon send out media reports that they were on the lookout for 2 women suspected of being involved in a series of murders. After hearing that, Moore got scared and left Wuornos to go back home to Pennsylvania. Florida law officers later contacted her to come back so she could right her wrongs, in which she succeeded.
Aileen was ultimately caught when her girlfriend got a recorded confession of Wuornos admitting the truth about the killings. Moore gave those to the Volusia Sheriff's investigators, and soon after Aileen was indicted. Eileen's first trial began January 13, 1992. She was first only charged with first-degree murder of Richard Mallory, armed robbery with a firearm, deadly weapon, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Richard Mallory was the only murder that went to trial, and Aileen was found guilty.
Prosecutors based Eileen's case off the confession she gave them when she was being interrogated for the first time. Although Eileen's story never added up because she told the police and Moore multiple different stories about what happened. The one that made the most sense was Eileen's claim that Mallory and her had been disagreeing because he wanted to have sex with her after only unzipping his pants. Wuornos then said to Mallory, "I knew you were going to take my money and rape me," then grabbed the bag where she kept the gun, and the two began struggling over possession of the bag. Wuornos got the gun from the bag, held it to Mallory's head, and said, "You son of a bitch, I knew you were going to rape me." Aileen tried to claim that all 7 murders were in self-defense and that she had been raped by them, but that was quickly dismissed. Wuornos' defense argued her statements in the video confessions were obtained involuntarily and violated her right to due process.
In the end, the jury found Wuornos guilty of all counts. The penalty phase started when the jury had to pick between the death sentence or life imprisonment. The state psychologist testified that she suffered from both borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. At the end of the trial, they concluded the death sentence and decided despite her psychological difficulties, she knew the difference between right and wrong. Finally, she was sentenced to the death penalty and was killed by lethal injection on January 31st, 1992.